Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's event, a Baylor Conversation, with our three distinguished panelists, Baylor President Linda Livingstone, our Board of Regents Chairman Joel Allison, and also our Interim Provost Michael McLendon. We are thrilled to have you here with us today. We hope that you'll take a moment to look at the beautiful Baylor skyline behind you and God's handiwork tonight. It is just beautiful here on the Baylor campus. Tonight during our conversation, we will hear from each of our panelists, and we will have a conversation about Baylor University and get some insight into where the university is as we move forward. We also will have time for a Q&A at the end of tonight's presentation. But before we get started, a brief introduction of our panelists, beginning with Dr. Linda Livingstone, Baylor University's president since June 1st of this year, and she was inaugurated officially back on October 26th. She is a graduate of Oklahoma State University and was a management professor on the Baylor Business faculty and also associate dean at the Hankamer School of Business during the years of 1991 to 2002. She then served as dean of the business schools at Pepperdine University and at George Washington University before she answered the call to return to Baylor, thankfully, in June of this year. She is Baylor's 15th president in the university's 172-year history. Mr. Joel Allison has spent more than 4 decades in healthcare management and just recently retired as recently as February as president and CEO of Baylor Scott & White Health. He is a graduate of both Baylor and Trinity University. He has been on the Board of Regents since 2012 and has been chair of the Baylor Board since June of this year. And then Dr. Michael McLendon was appointed by President Livingstone as interim provost of the university, effective on July 1st, and he began his service then as university's chief academic officer. He is a graduate of Baylor, the University of Michigan, and Florida State University, and he served on the faculties at both Vanderbilt and SMU before he returned to Baylor in 2015 as dean of the School of Education and the Fred and Edith Hale Endowed Professor of Higher Education Policy and Leadership. Thank you all for being here this evening.
Thank you.
And we especially appreciate you being here this week of Thanksgiving as well. Dr. Livingstone, we just talked about your inauguration.
Sure.
Let's look back at that day, your inauguration just a few weeks ago. You are nearing now your 6-month anniversary as president of Baylor. What's your favorite memory so far serving as Baylor's 15th president?
Well, it's a great question, a really difficult one to answer. And before I do that, I do want to thank all of you for being here. I know it's a busy week, and we just appreciate you being here to be a part of the conversation about what's going on here at Baylor. But you know, it's been a wonderful 6 months, and I would have to say, kind of on a very high level, what has been sort of the really impressive for us is just the way we've been welcomed back to the Baylor community, whether it's by students or faculty or staff or the Waco community. The broader Baylor family has been really wonderful, and I think the inauguration was kind of symbolic of that. It was just a lovely event, and we had representation from all of our constituent groups there, and just a really special week for me and for my family. But if I had to pick one experience that was really very cool and special, it was the day we did the commemorative running of the Baylor line at the Texas football game. And that, for me, was really wonderful on so many levels. You know, bringing back the women that had not gotten to do that when they were on campus back in the 70s, 80s, and early 90s. And that day I met so many women that had wonderful stories. They were running with their kids that were freshmen this year. They were running with their moms and their friends. And I saw lots of tears that day because they thought it was such a wonderful and special thing to get to do one of these really special traditions that is so much a part of Baylor. And so in many ways that sort of symbolized, you know, us bringing people together, looking to the future of the institution, and then also taking advantage of our traditions.
Well, has this role been what you expected when you walked in the doors of Patton F. Hall on June 1st. Well, technically you weren't there June 1st,
no.
but at some other meetings, but has it been what you expected?
You know, I think it has, because I had been in the academic world for a number of years at different institutions. I have a sense of what it's like to be a university president, even though I had not been one. But I would have to say that I think what has been particularly pleasing for me is just the optimism at the institution. Even though we've been through a very, very difficult stretch here, there's tremendous optimism, there's tremendous desire to come together and to look forward to the future of the university. And I think there was more of that than I might have anticipated before I came back. But we're having a great time and are thrilled to be back at Baylor.
Thank you. And Mr. Allison, you have served in healthcare management for a long time, so you've worked with a lot of executives. What kind of qualities did you see in Dr. Livingstone that she brings as university president? Sure.
Well, thank you, Lori. And again, let me extend my thanks to all of you for being here this evening. We really appreciate you being here and allowing us to have this time with you. And before I answer that question, how about our soccer team?
Yeah, that's great.
Wonderful, historic, first time in the Elite Eight.
That's
anyway,
right.
I always want to say what a joy it's been to work with Dr. Livingstone since she came on board. When we formed the search committee, and it was a very diverse search committee, it had non-regents, had faculty, had folks from our alumni base. It was a part of the process was to establish some criteria. What are you looking for in the next president, the 15th president for Baylor University? And as we sat down and as the committee talked about it, the qualities we were looking for, number one was we wanted a person who was unapologetically Christian, strong Christian. Linda came very, very strongly in that criteria, no question. We wanted to find someone that really understood academics. There was a lot of discussion about someone with a terminal degree. Now, as I told the other group, being in healthcare for 45 years, when you say terminal, I was having a hard time understanding terminal degree, but I understood, Dr. McLendon, I figured it out. But seriously, want somebody with a terminal degree. Again, Dr. Livingstone was right there. We wanted someone who understood how to manage complex organizations with large budgets. Her background with management, she understands organizational dynamics in management and how to design management structure. We want someone that's understood operations of a large organization and a complex one. And again, Dr. Livingstone met that criteria 100%. We also were looking for someone, obviously, with the capability to have good communication skills and relate to all constituents, students, faculty, the staff, and as you know already, she's a great communicator. We want someone, obviously, with integrity. One of the things I was looking for, and I think great leaders have that in today's world, is I was looking for someone with humility. And that was authentic. And I can assure you, I was very impressed when we interviewed Dr. Livingstone about those characteristics. And then obviously we wanted someone, if we could, that had past Baylor experience, knew Baylor, knew who we are, knew about us. And again, she hit those standards very well. So again, as we went down the list, there was no question that Dr. Livingstone was the right person at the right time for Baylor University. Now, it didn't hurt at all, and it wasn't a criteria that she played Big 12 basketball.
And Big 8 basketball, I'm that old. It was a few years before the Big 12.
Okay. But still, it didn't hurt. And right around that table with all those presidents of those other universities, we had the one president that actually played in the Big 12 sports. So that was kind of the extra that we saw. But seriously, Lori, we looked at all the criteria. There was no question. Dr. Livingstone met and exceeded the qualities we were looking for in the next president of Baylor University.
It certainly does. Michael, Dr. McLendon, let's talk about the role of dean. Dr. Livingstone came from that world, being a dean. You yourself have served here at Baylor as the Dean of the School of Education. So talk about that experience and what the role of dean is, and how that specifically helps or can help in the role of a university president.
Lori, are you asking me to evaluate the suitability of our president, my boss, for the job she holds?
Sorry to put you on the spot there.
Yes, of course she's well suited.
But how does it prepare? How does being a dean prepare someone for a university president?
The deanship is an excellent preparation for the presidency for a couple of reasons. The deanship, the dean herself, stands in between senior leadership on campus and faculty and the students whom faculty and, in fact, whom all of us serve. The deans are the ones who are responsible for the day-to-day work of the schools and colleges and the faculty who teach, who mentor students, who conduct scholarship and research. It's the deans who have to prepare budgets. It's the deans who have to deal with fixing problems daily around personnel issues. It's the deans that when an emergency or a crisis emerges of some kind are often the ones who are first on the scene. It's the deans who increasingly in American higher education today are having to think more strategically than ever before about the direction of their units, their schools and colleges. And for all of those reasons, having that experience as a dean is a very important way to prepare for more senior leadership roles. The institutional context, though, is also important, which is to say that deans that grow up in different kinds of contexts learn different kinds of skill sets and have different kinds of temperaments and abilities and sensibilities. And the particular schools, business schools, where President Livingstone happened to serve as dean, are remarkably entrepreneurial places. They're market-oriented places. They're places that view students in the context of the increasing competition that exists between and among universities for top talent. Deanship at those universities, at Pepperdine and also at George Washington, are deanships in which one develops skills of strategic sensibility, creativity, innovation, and innovativeness. These are the kinds of skill sets and sensibilities that we want in our deans increasingly at Baylor. And so for all of those reasons, not only the fact that President Livingstone had held a deanship, several of them, but the places in which she deaned is very important, and I think provides the basis for the leadership that we need here at Baylor.
Lori, let me add something to this. When I was a dean, I can remember so many times thinking, oh my gosh, if I'm ever a university president, I'm never going to do that. Or I'd better do that if I'm ever a university president. So I told the deans that when I came, and I said, so you're gonna have to hold me accountable and remind me of my roots as a dean. If you look at me and go, why in the world would she do that? Because she used to be a dean, she should know better. So hopefully that academic background and that grounding as a dean will help us as we move forward.
And one hears one's sense also of her humility, because the reality is that the message went the other direction as well. Deans can't say, our president doesn't understand what it's like, so it raises the bar in terms of our own accountability and responsibility.
All right. Well, that was a nice way for us to start, but let's look at some of other issues and some news of the day. Dr. Livingstone, two significant dominoes fell within the past couple of weeks, and the first one was the SAC COC on-site review, and then was the external verification of the 105 recommendations by Cozen O'Connor. Why was that significant, and what will be maybe the next domino to fall?
Sure. Now, those were extremely helpful to us and important for us, because the institution as a whole, since long before I was here, has been putting tremendous effort. Hundreds of people on campus work diligently to implement the 105 recommendations that came from the Pepper-Hamilton report. And so to have the SAC COC, which is our regional accrediting body, we were put on warning last year related to student support, athletics, and kind of some institutional governance and control issues. And so they sent a team back recently to look at what we had done since they put us on warning before we do our regular accreditation visit in the coming spring. And it was sort of an external validation that what we said we were going to do to address the findings of fact, to address those recommendations, we have done. That is just a recommendation from that committee. It has to go to what they call the Commission on Colleges in early December, and we're hopeful that they will then lift the warning at that early December meeting. So we'll know that the first week in December, and so hopefully that will be good news for us. And so that certainly is very, very important. And the second one is, as you said, we had external auditors, the same two attorneys that did the Pepper Hamilton report are now with Cozen O'Connor. And so they came in to do an external review of whether or not we have fully completed the 105. And we released publicly a report a couple of weeks ago. The report is a total of about 750 total pages. The report itself is not that long, but there's a bunch of appendices to it that basically affirms that we have completed work on those 105. Again, it's really important to have that external validation. We feel like we've made huge progress, but to have outsiders tell us that. We also know that there are elements of those that you're never completely done with. Part of it's about building culture. Part of it's about breaking down silos. Part of it's about embedding processes and systems just so that they just happen because it's the right thing to do, not because you're checking a box. And so we know that even though we've implemented the 105, we still have to pay a lot of attention to them. In terms of hopefully next dominoes to fall, we are continuing to work with the Big 12. They are also doing an external review of whether or not we have completed those 105 recommendations. They have been on campus already once. They will be coming back another time, probably 2 more times, to continue validating that we have completed those recommendations. So the next board meeting of the Big 12 is in February. So we're hopeful that there will have been a lot of progress on their review by that February meeting, and we'll have a better sense of kind of their assessment of that. But I've had really good interactions with the Big 12 president since I've been here. They think very highly of Mac Rhodes and Matt Rule. So we feel like we're in a good place with them and moving forward. And then we continue to work with the OCR and the Cleary report because they're doing some investigation. Cleary tends to take 2, 3, 4, 5 years sometimes. That is probably the longest one out. OCR, it depends a little bit. They're changing their processes some, so it could be resolved sooner rather than later, but I don't know what sooner actually means. So that's a little bit of a sense of the timing of some of what's out there with regard to some of the investigations.
Okay, and how about some news on the legal front that you might be able to give us an update on? It seems like we pick up the paper, there's a new development just about every day, and when might we see these lawsuits resolved?
Sure. So a number of lawsuits have been resolved over the last year and a half, but we still have 5 active lawsuits that are out there right now. The one that you read the most about in the paper is called Jane Doe 1 through 10, and that's gotten quite a bit of attention because there's a couple of legal questions that are a little bit unique to these kinds of cases, some of which relate to the privacy of student records and student health records and those sorts of things. So we're working that through the legal system. Of the 5 cases, one is scheduled to go to trial in the summer of 2018, one of the other ones in the early 2019. And what we found as we work through these, we're trying to bring resolution to these in ways that brings reconciliation and healing in appropriate ways for the survivors that are a part of these various cases. And for some, that is some type of a settlement. For others, it might be actually going through the whole legal process. And so, we're trying to work through those in appropriate ways with the different survivors, depending on the nature of the cases and what they really believe is in their best interest. And so it'll probably be another 1.5 to 2 years to get through that set of cases, particularly given some of the court dates that we know are out there.
And Mr. Allison, it also seemed that the past couple of years the Board of Regents was in the news quite often. Not so much now. So where is the board now? Why is that? And well, what are the board's current priorities?
Sure. Thank you, Lori. My goal was for the Regents not to be in the news. We don't need to be in the news. We have a president that's the face of Baylor, not the Regents. Jimmy, when you and I were here as students, I don't know about you, but I didn't know we had Regents or trustees then, perhaps. All I knew was Abner McCall was our president, and he didn't want to see me, and I didn't want to see him. That was all. Well, we wouldn't need to go back to that time. But seriously, we worked hard this past summer on, and have continued to work hard on implementing some restructuring of the board to really understand the role of the board as it relates to management and the role of management. We had our annual retreat and board meeting in July. We had representatives from the AGB, the Association of Governing Boards come in, an expert to talk about standards, best practices as board members. We set some priorities around how we would function, and we know that boards have three basic responsibilities. Obviously, first and foremost, it's to hire and fire the CEO. That's number one. But you have three real responsibilities that you need to keep in mind. And we've been working on this. We just had 2 meetings under our new structure, which I'll mention a little bit about. But the first responsibility is fiduciary, just making sure that everything's operational and holding the president and the management accountable. And that's kind of your oversight as a board member. The second is strategic, and that's foresight. We approve the strategy plan as presented by management with input from the board. And then third is what we call generative, and that's foresight. Boards need to be spending a lot of their times today talking about the future. What are the issues that Dr. Livingstone can bring forward that we need to be thinking about today that are going to impact us 5, 10 years from now? And what's Baylor going to look like under some of the external forces that are having an impact in higher education and really understanding higher education. So again, the role of the board is the boards will be the board. Management will have their role as management. Dr. Livingstone and I have had conversations where it's my responsibility to keep the board in their lanes. Dr. Livingstone's responsibility to keep management in their lanes. And that's the way we're going to move forward. And part of that is brought about by the restructuring as well of the board that we have been implementing. So our priorities were first, over the last several months, obviously a year, was to fully implement the 105 recommendations from what is known as the Pepper-Hamilton report. The second was to implement the recommendations that come from our governance review task force that was appointed by the board to really look at how we could be better structured to be more effective as board members. And that was a task force of 6 people, 3 non-regions, 3 regions. The 3 non-regions came from corporate America, from high levels of operational as either board chairs or CEOs, and they've brought forward some great recommendations that were adopted, and it helped us set up a structure that, one, it set up a fact that on the committees we went from 6 to 8. We eliminated the athletic committee. We split the compliance and the audit committee. We split university governance and leadership from the committee on the staff professionals. And then we had also we appointed a staff professional recently, a board professional, to come in and work with the board of best practice. And we have a young lady coming to us, as you may have seen, from UT, where she has a very similar role in that respect. So we're doing that. Another change we made was that the committees, we had to go to an extra day of board meetings for committees, because committees used to meet simultaneously, so we would meet a full day and then a half-day full board. We now have it such that all board members can attend any committee, even if they're not committee members, so that there's very much transparency, openness, and we have a monthly executive committee information call, and all board members are asked to come and join, usually a teleconference, phone call. So again, we have made significant changes. We now have 3 vice chairs. We set the committee meetings to be much shorter because we've got to get through 8 committees in 2 days. So we have instructed them they must get through in 1 hour and 45 minutes in each committee, which causes the chairs to have to set priorities and talk about the most important, relevant topics that will take that amount of time, so that we're really focusing on our priorities and the ones that Dr. Livingstone and the chairs want to really focus on, and bring those to the board then for any action that might be necessary. So again, a lot of changes that are, I think, extremely positive, very open, very candid communications with the board members, among the board members. So again, I think we've moved into also understanding the difference between transparency and confidentiality. And one of the things that we have learned in the past, we've got to do a better job communicating. And it's just like this forum. It's how can we be more open and candid with communications to our constituents, so that people feel they are informed of what's going on at the university they love.
Right. And over the past 18 months, Dr. McLendon, the Baylor has continued to teach students, conduct research, and also to transform lives as it has throughout its history. How has the academic enterprise here at the university been able to maintain its focus, and how has Baylor's academic reputation, if at all, been impacted?
Well, maintaining focus is easy to do when one is given the charges that President Livingstone gave me and the academic leadership of the institution about 5-6 months ago. Although at the time when President Livingstone and I began discussing the role of interim provostship, she didn't know me very well. We didn't know one another at that time. I think she's a master motivator, and she knew me well enough to know that a significant charge, a robust charge, would be something that would be very encouraging to me and animating. And in fact, the 2 charges that we've been given this year, the academic side of Baylor, our deans, our provost office, our faculty as well, this largely faculty-driven in many ways. 2 things. One is the development of the first academic strategic plan that Baylor's ever had. Our vision for the university, of course, remains that of pro futuris, but we haven't had an academic strategic plan that tells us precisely where we're going. We haven't had a roadmap necessarily that helps us implement the coming 5-year period of the pro futuris vision, and that's what we've been handed this year, for us to develop the university's first strategic academic plan. And that's an exciting process, and I'll say a little bit about both the content, substance of that, as well as the process that we're doing. But that has organized us fundamentally this year, and we're doing things that we've never before done, identifying ways we want to make investments in the academic core of the institution, identifying programs and major initiatives that will help deepen Baylor's impact in terms of its research and its scholarship, what we do in the lives of students, and things along those lines. The second thing that we were handed this year was aligning the academic strategic plan with what is likely to be a coming capital campaign. So the prospect of going and raising a large amount of money that would then help build the academic core of Baylor University in the years to come is enough for anyone to take on at one time, and that certainly has kept us very grounded and also very focused, Lori. Now, at the same time, we're very mindful and we pay very close monitoring to what's going on in the life of the institution on a day-to-day basis, and we ask ourselves a variety of things. Are faculty, the top faculty in the country, wanting to be at Baylor? And the answer is yes. The evidence is that we're hiring faculty of just the kind that we want. Are students applying to Baylor? Undergraduate students, for example, and are they attending? And indeed they are. It turns out that this year's applications are a little bit higher. The number of applications a little bit higher than they were this time last year, and last year's were an all-time record high. So we're doing very well in terms of the Baylor brand being one that's important in attracting the very finest undergraduates to this university. And also something that's very important to me, and it would be to any provost, and it is to our president as well, is the morale on campus. How are faculty and staff feeling about the university, about the work they do? And this is a remarkable place. I've been at some very fine universities, as each of us has been. I've never been at a place, never been at a university where faculty care as deeply about what they do, where faculty care as much for the teaching and the mentoring function as they do here at Baylor, and that is as strong today as it has ever been. So while we're attentive and careful to questions around the extent to which the recent years may have impacted in a negative way or an adverse way our brand or the campus itself, I have to tell you in all honesty and all candor that we feel things are going very well on the life of the campus. And our faculty are very deeply committed to students. Our students are very pleased to be here. There's evidence of learning at high levels. There's evidence of the ones who are not here wanting to choose Baylor and to come have their lives transformed as a result of being an undergraduate at the university. So things seem to be going very well.
All right, as Baylor does continue to move forward, especially with the academic strategic plan, and we'll talk more about that in just a few moments. Mr. Allison, as Baylor continues to emerge from the events of the past couple of years, can you characterize the sentiment of the Board of Regents?
Yeah, I think the board is functioning at a much higher level now on how we're working together. It's very open, as I mentioned, with these changes that have been made. We've talked a lot about how we can continue to support Dr. Livingstone, to support our students, and to really continue to focus on what Baylor's mission is. We've been so I guess, tied down the last 18 months on things. It's really exciting now to see how the board is really implementing these new governance changes. Our board also adopted at the first meeting we had in July of the new board. We now have 41 voting members and 1 ex officio. So we added as voting members representatives from the Letter Winners Association, the Bear Foundation, who had been ex officio. We now have 4 alumni elected regents on the board. We've added 2 faculty. We had 1 faculty ex officio. We now have 2 faculty members voting. We have a student voting and a student ex officio. So again, we're getting a lot more input, more different thoughts. We've said we're going to be very open, very candid. Everybody's going to have the opportunity to speak and to give their opinions. We're going to work collegially, but we're also going to have candid dialogue. One of the things that we adopted also, and not only did the board adopt it, but Dr. Livingstone had her staff adopt it, and that is what we call the 4 non-negotiables, how we're going to move forward and make decisions in the future. And those 4 non-negotiables, as we look at a decision that needs to be made, we're going to ask ourselves 4 questions. Number 1, will this decision keep Baylor University Christ-centered, first and foremost? Number 2, will it continue to maintain and enhance the mission of Baylor University, which is to educate men and women for worldwide leadership by integrating academic excellence with Christian commitment within a caring community? It's about our students. We want to remember, in healthcare, we always focused on the patient. We were there for the patient. No matter what else we were doing, it was about the patient. Decisions had to be in the best interest at all time of the patient. Here we have to look at it from the standpoint of our mission around our students. That's why we're all here, faculty, staff, regents. The third thing is, will it reflect our core values and our convictions as a Christian institution? And then the fourth question we ask ourselves is it the right thing for the right reason? And if we run through those screens and say yes, 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 yes to those 4, I believe without a doubt we will make a good decision as we go forward. And that's how we will function, understanding the role of the board and how we work with management going forward.
And Mr. Allison, you've also talked a lot about unifying the Baylor family. Tell us why that is important, and how will we know when we get there?
It's a great question, and as I think people know, the last 18 months or so, we kind of, our family got a little bit fractured at points, and one of the goals I set with the board when I was asked to chair, I said there's 2 things I want to see us working together accomplish. Number 1, restore trust in the Board of Regents. Number 2, unify the Baylor family. As Dr. Livingstone and I have talked to a lot of different constituents, a lot of different members of the Baylor family, they all have such, as we all do, a passion for Baylor. They all love Baylor. And they love what we stand for. And it's been hurtful and painful and embarrassing at times over the last 18 months. And what we hope to do is to be able to find ways that we can come together back as family and be a family, working together. There's going to be a difference of opinions, just like any family. I heard today or somewhere that if you want to shorten your Thanksgiving meals, talk politics. It shortens the meal by about 30 minutes. There's always going to be difference of opinion, and that's okay. That's what makes us great, is to have that diversity. It's just we've got to also learn how to work together, and also that when we come together, the reason I feel so strongly about unifying the Baylor family is for our students. They're the ones that have had the pain and the suffering of going through some of this. It's all about unifying the family, bringing our family together, even with the differences of opinion. That's okay. That's going to happen. But it is important as we move forward, because what I found, I don't care where they were coming from, they all are passionate about Baylor, even when they may have had disagreements. They love this university, as we all do.
Dr. Livingstone, you have spoken several engagements recently, and you've talked about these 3 words, strong, secure, strategic. So can you tell us what this means? How will it help Baylor move forward?
Sure.
And have you seen any progress in those areas?
Sure. So the context for those, when I first came on June 1st, I worked with the board and then with our leadership within the university to develop a set of goals for this year. So what are the things we're going to focus on this year to help move the institution forward? And so we framed those goals in those three categories: in strong, secure, and strategic. So strong really has to do with developing capacity for leadership in the institution that helps us move forward on our mission and vision. And so we've made a lot of progress. There are a couple things I'll mention. I won't go into all of the specific goals there. One, part of that is building my leadership team. I tell everyone, they say, what's the most important thing as a leader? I said, it's to have the right people on your leadership team that can work well together, can support the mission, and move the institution forward. We've made a few changes to that leadership team already. We've done some restructuring of that. We are in the process of searching for some really key positions. Joel already mentioned the board professional position, Christy Orr. We're really excited. She starts December 4th, so next Monday. And she's going to be a great help in working with the board and bridging between the board and the administration. We are in the process of posting the chief business officer position. We're kind of transitioning the chief operating officer position to a chief business officer position. It will have a bit more of an entrepreneurial focus in looking at how we, beyond what we're doing on the academic side, can use elements of the institution to help ensure that we're financially secure, both in terms of our way we spend money, but also the way we can use some of our resources to bring in additional revenue. And then Provost McLendon is doing a fabulous job as our interim provost, but he does have interim in front of his title, so we've got to move through a provost search process to move that forward. So we're in the early stages of that as well. We just did a survey with our faculty and staff to get feedback on that, so we are moving that forward. So by the probably late into the spring, early summer, we will really have wrapped up some of those key positions and be in a great position to move forward in even more significant ways than we are now. One of the other elements that really ties to what Joel was just talking about, one of the other ways we want to build strength is by building pathways for reconciliation with the various elements of the Baylor family that have been hurt in this process, who have felt disenfranchised in this process, whether it was the last couple of years or whether it was things that happened 5 or 10 years ago. And so that's an important part of what we're doing, and we're certainly making that effort to be out, meeting with people, working through some of those issues, and bringing people back together. The secure element of it really has to do with being strong operationally and financially, and then also how we're ensuring that we have the right climate on our campus for health and well-being of all of our members of our community. Provost McLendon talked about enrollment and how that was strong this fall. Our numbers are looking good for next year. That's important when you go through a difficult time like this. Sometimes enrollment can take a dip, particularly in the second and third years. And so next fall is year 2. The year after that will be year 3. So we're feeling really good that our applications are looking good and tracking with last year, which he said, as he said, was the largest number of applications we'd ever had. But we have to continue to monitor that. We're so enrollment driven with regard to our budget that we have to pay very close attention to that. But the other piece of that is the climate of our campus and ensuring that we're really building a climate that is a positive one and really helps ensure well-being for our for the people on our campus. The Pepper Hamilton 105 recommendations is a significant part of that, and completing those was one of those goals. But the other part, we did 2 climate surveys late last spring that we are just getting the results from. One was regarding the climate for sexual harassment, sexual violence, sexual assault issues on our campus. We call it the Title IX survey in shorthand. That survey was completed. We released that a couple of weeks ago, so that information is all out there online, all the results of that survey. There were elements of that showed we are making really good progress in terms of awareness, training, people knowing where to report. But there are areas where we've got more work to do and more training and more effort that has to go into it. And so that was important for us to learn more about our climate. The second survey is a diversity climate survey. We are in the very last stages of finalizing the results from that survey. We had an outside firm do that analysis for us. So we should, within a week or 2 after Thanksgiving, be reporting out the results of the diversity climate survey. So we will learn from that as well and look at what do we need to then be working on even more than we have over the recent years to ensure we have a climate on our campus that is welcoming and engaging for the very diverse set of individuals that we have on our campus. So that's kind of the secure piece or elements of it. And then finally is the strategic piece. the last couple of years, we've been very internally focused and very focused on the moment and working through very difficult issues and had to. But now we really need to lift our eyes up and look to the future and say, where are we going as an institution? And Provost McLendon mentioned that what we're doing is building out phase 2 of Pro Futuris, which is our aspiration to be a top-tier research university that maintains the integrity of our Christian focus as an institution. And so what we're working on this year is building out the academic goals in that plan. We are working out facilities priorities in that plan, and then we are building out a comprehensive campaign around that. And so that is in process. We will have a draft of that plan for our regents in February. We hope to then have a final version of it for the regents at their May meeting where they can approve it, and then we can really roll up our sleeves and move forward on that. But I'm going to let Provost McLendon talk a little bit about the process. He's actually doing the heavy lifting. It really is unfair for a new president to ask an interim provost to take on a task like that, but he has just been doing a tremendous job working with our deans and our department chairs and others on that. So I want him to talk a little bit about that process and where that is, because it's really bringing the community together around some really important initiatives that will be exciting for the future.
Thank you. It is daunting. As one who studies, who conducts research, who's taught for many years, who thinks a lot about the enterprise of American higher education, I study universities. I'll tell you that the Baylor proposition is one of the most exciting and challenging propositions for any university in the country, ever in history. And President Livingstone mentioned a few of the critical elements of that. Let me just restate them for a moment because they're sweeping. That we want to be a world-renowned research university that is unambiguously Christian. That's a remarkable proposition at the same time as we say we want to be committed to excellence in teaching, committed to a transformative undergraduate experience for students, and that we will maintain our faith tradition and commitment, our Christian heritage. The combination of those separate elements makes Baylor unique in the landscape of all of American higher education. It also poses real opportunities and challenges also for us in thinking about elements of that formula altogether. And the part that we're working on this year, we're right in the middle of it, is the design phase for helping build greater research and scholarly depth and impact at Baylor. That is to say, how do we build even more so quality at this university, academic quality? How do we create and build and grow and deepen centers of research that will have an impact on the world around us? Where do we want to be in 5 and 10 years and a generation downstream? And others asking the question, what important problems facing humanity, facing the world, did Baylor faculty and students help solve? And that's the question, and the questions we're asking ourselves. What are the areas in which we want to engage more so than we do today? What are the problems facing the world around us that we want to have been seen in a generation's time as having helped solve? And so, as we know, motivation is particularly important, and old deans learn that it's really important to motivate faculty. And the best way to do that is to ask faculty to do the work. And so beginning this summer, I turned to our deans here and asked the question, simply put, where do we want to be in 5, 10, and 20 years from now? In what areas do we want to invest? How do we want to deepen Baylor's research impact on the world around us? And deans working with select faculty across the university have been designing initiatives. And they've been bringing those initiatives to a team of us out of the Provost office, including deans and faculty, who are reviewing each of these initiatives. And the questions that we ask are questions like, why should we do that? How is it consistent with Baylor's mission? How is it integral and essential for who we are as a university and a people that we do that we be in that line of business? How much will this cost us? What's the right scale? How should we invest in it, and what are the returns of it? How will we know that it's successful when we see it? And precisely, putting arithmetic to it, how will the returns look for the investment we're about to make, and how will those returns look in 5, 10, and 20 years? Those are the questions that I've been asking our deans and our faculty, working around a series of very exciting initiatives now that we think will propel Baylor forward in our research mission to become one of the world's finest research universities. I've met with about, all of the chairs in the university. That's 50 chairs. Provosts don't often speak with every chair in the university, and certainly not usually within 3 to 4 weeks of time. But that was the importance that I knew that President Livingstone wanted us to pay to involving all of the university community. So we've involved our deans, our faculty at the rank level, departments, department chairs, all of the lines and chains of leadership. Our faculty senate as well, where President Livingstone and I have gone to speak on a couple of occasions about the emerging plan. And just as the President indicated, in February we'll have the initial tentative, a draft of the academic strategic plan. We'll be with the board in the February meeting. We'll receive feedback from them and comments. We'll go back as an academic leadership team, work with the President, with deans and with faculty in revising the plan that we put forward. And then presumably in May, should everything look good, then the board would take that plan up again and deliberate on that one more time. So this is an exciting time in the life of the university, and we've been both transparent about it. We've wanted to communicate in ways we've not done before necessarily in terms of bringing academic leaders together to work on a big strategic project that involves our future. And I feel really good about where we are in the process of that to date.
All right, thank you, Dr. McLendon. Dr. Livingstone, you spoke at your inauguration about Tier 1 status. What is that? Can you define it for us? And that's another question, is how do you know when you get there?
Right. Yeah, well, there's a lot of academic language that we use. We talk about R1, Research 1, Tier 1. So we recognize we have different audiences, and so trying to explain these different things to different audiences is an interesting endeavor. But there are some very standard measures in the academic world that have to do with how you're viewed from an academic quality perspective. And so in the world of research, the Carnegie Foundation has a set of metrics that they look at, and they look at the amount of expenditures you're spending on research in STEM fields and social sciences and humanities. They look at your PhD production in those different areas. They look at the amount of staff you have supporting the research endeavors of your institution. And you can actually look and see what schools that are considered R1 schools, what they're spending versus what we're spending. So there's really clear metrics. You can kind of tell what the gap is and what you're going to have to do to get there. There's another set of metrics that are oftentimes what we pull from U.S. News and World Report that are more undergraduate focused, and we've put quite a bit of attention in those. Those were really the focus of the first 5 years of the implementation of Pro Futuris, and they have to do with graduation rates of undergraduate students, retention rates of undergraduate students, faculty-student ratios, those kinds of things. Those will still matter to us, and we still need to make progress on some of those. Some of them we make huge progress, and we probably need to maintain. Others we've got to continue. Again, those are pretty clear metrics that are out there. You know where you are, you know where you need to go. Then there's another set of metrics that I would say are probably ones that are very important to us at Baylor, but aren't going to show up in U.S. News and World Report, or they're not going to show up in the Carnegie. And it's things like student engagement, in service learning, in international study, in learning that engages them with whether it's the business community or the healthcare community, whatever community it is that they're studying in. So engagement kinds of things in and out of the classroom. We care about spiritual formation here. So we want to know how our students are doing in terms of spiritual formation and how they're developing and maturing during their time here. And then there's issues of impact. Is the research that our faculty is doing, so we spend a lot of money here and we have a lot of staff and we produce a lot of PhDs, but is the research that they're doing actually making a difference in the world? And the Carnegie numbers don't assess that in any way. And is the learning that we're doing with our students impacting those students, and is it making them better citizens in the world and better employees and better contributors in society? And so those kinds of things we care about. They're harder to measure as well, but nobody else is going to really assess those when you're looking at some of these academic measures. So we've sort of said there's got to be this package that encompasses all of that, and I think Michael coined the term Baylor One. So we're going to kind of create certainly a set of metrics that touches on what you have to focus on to raise your status nationally, but also those things that make us unique and that we have to care about regardless of whether the Carnegie Foundation or U.S. News actually measures those things. And so we're in the process of identifying those metrics, looking at where we are against them, where we can go in 5 years versus where we need to be in 10 and 15 years. And that will all be sort of built into the plan as we roll it out in the coming months.
Okay, we thank you both for your leadership in that area. And Mr. Allison, as far as the Board of Regents, how will they be engaged in the academic?
Sure, and as I mentioned, one of the roles of the board is strategic, and that is really to approve the strategic plan as presented by management. And one of the things that's really exciting for the board is to be working on this strategy. And we heard kind of a preview from Michael and Linda at the last board meeting in October. And very exciting. And one of the best sessions that I've had as a board member since I've been on was the Wednesday night. After our committee meetings that day, we had a dinner that we had the deans with the board members and discussion about, Michael and Linda led that, asking questions, then we'd have that discussion and get input, kind of a brainstorming around the strategy. And it was a very effective way to get input from the board, but also to hear from the deans as well. And so we're looking forward to getting the first draft of it, if you will, as Michael said, in February, and then hopefully with some more input then bring it back. One of the boards I served, I remember a board member said, Joel, it's always a lot more fun to work on strategy. And we have not had that much time and been able to work on it. So this is exciting for the board to have Linda and Michael really, with the deans and the faculty, looking at the strategy and being able to approve a roadmap. Then the board also has a responsibility from a fiduciary standpoint to be sure we align the financial resources required with the plan, because every good strategy has the requirements from a resource, whether it's human resources or financial. And so we'll have to continue to find ways, once that is approved, that we can make sure that we have the financial resources for them to implement and carry out the strategy.
All right. Thank you all for the good conversation tonight and for your commitment to open communication. We appreciate that. And we will begin our Q&A momentarily. But first, Dr. Livingstone, do you have any final comments before we get to the Q&A and we discuss how that'll work?
You know, I think that we're at a very sort of unique time and opportunity at Baylor right now. We have great alignment, which has not always been the case, from our students and faculty and staff up through our administration, up through our regents, about where we are and what we need to do to move forward. And when you have that kind of alignment, it's a tremendous opportunity to take advantage of that and move forward. And we are really deeply committed to this idea of building a Christian research university that is viewed among the top universities in the country, while ensuring that we maintain the integrity and continue to strengthen our Christian mission. And that matters because you have influence in academics, you have influence in the broader world from a policy perspective because you're respected academically. So we have to be respected academically, in some ways independent of our Christian mission. And when we're respected academically because of the scholarly work our faculty are doing, the quality of the learning experience our students have, then people will listen to us, and then they will hear the Christian mission that underpins all of what we're doing. And there are really almost no other institutions in this country that can do that or that will do that. And I would say in the Protestant world, there are no other institutions that can position themselves to do that. In my inauguration address, I used the phrase that the world needs Baylor. And I absolutely believe that, particularly at this point in time, given what's going on in our society, both domestically and internationally, that there needs to be that really strong Christian academic voice to have an influence in the world, both on the lives of our students, on the scholarly work that's done, and then on society more broadly. And we are just in a unique place to be able to do that right now and move this forward in a significant way in the coming years.
Well, well stated. Thank you very much, Dr. Livingstone. We do have some time for some questions. If you have a question, we ask if you just will raise your hand and kindly tell us who you are, if you would be so kind as to do that. Michelle Berry is at the back. She has our microphone. Teresa Mellon also has another microphone. So are there any questions for our panelists? We have a couple. Yes, sir.
Jim Alexander.
Yes.
Is Baylor working on becoming a member of the Association of American Universities, the AAU? Is that a goal of the university?
And Michael, you can speak to this as well. It's not an explicit goal that we've talked about. It's actually extremely difficult, even for R1 universities, to get into the AAU. It's a self-perpetuating group, and so they're very particular about letting anybody in that's not in, and they actually kick people out occasionally. So it's a very, very difficult and high standard. There are universities whose research numbers, those R1 numbers I was talking about around research and stuff, are better than institutions in the AAU, and they can't get into the AAU. So I think our numbers are a long way from sort of even being in that group. You know, way down the road you can consider it, but even if we got to the place where our numbers were equivalent to that, it would still be hard to get in because it's a very closed community. And would you agree with that?
I would say precisely what Linda has said. We're doing the kinds of things that would elevate us into that arena one day. That day is going to be some number of years from now. But we're doing the kinds of things that AAU universities do, and we're doing them systematically and strategically in ways that we've not necessarily in the past. And so we'll be better prepared to be considered as a university that does the kinds of things that AAU institutions do, but it's not one of our primary goals driving us today.
We have another question right here. Okay. The microphone's coming to you, sir.
Howdy, I'm David Wills. I got one real quick question and then a longer one. You were ripping through some of that stuff, the plan, so fast. I'm trying to take notes. You went too fast for me. You said there were three things that are a focus: excellence in teaching, transformative experiences, and
two others. Sometimes it's 3, 4. Sometimes Liberty, I take 5. I think at this moment I said 4.
I really missed them.
The third would be maintaining our Christian witness, our historic Christian commitment, the formation of students, creating intellectual capabilities around questions of importance to Christendom and American Christianity worldwide as well. The fourth area would be that of building the research and scholarship of the institution, building the research portfolio and the depth and the impact, particularly the impact on society of the research that we do at Baylor.
Okay. So here's my bigger question. I'd love for each of you to give your thoughts on this. We've talked a lot about inputs, lots of different things, but when you think about the outcome, okay, so when my family, when we're given to Baylor, we're thinking about the output.
Sure.
How would you describe what success looks like for the next output that Baylor has?
So, you know, we talked about all those metrics, but I think at the end of the day, for Baylor, it was some of those things I was talking about around sort of engagement and spiritual formation and impact. And what we hope the output on the back end is, let's say at the undergraduate level, that we are producing students that certainly are intellectually developed and know their field really well, but they also care deeply about society, and through the work that they do are making a difference in the world, and that they have matured as young people in a way that helps them to care about the world deeply and direct their lives to make a difference, whether it's through their professional work or their church work or their nonprofit work, but that it's about the way they conduct themselves in their lives. In terms of our research, I think we want the research that our faculty are doing to matter. You can do a lot of research just for the sake of doing research to build your numbers, but we want them to do research that matters. So we have some faculty doing research on water quality. A lot of that work's happening in some of the third world countries. If we can actually help create cleaner water in third world countries, we can solve a lot of health issues, a lot of disease issues, and it will make a huge difference for the lives of people in those countries. We have some other faculty working with students on tropical diseases. You know, if you could solve malaria as a tropical disease problem, it would have a huge impact on society. So we hope that the research that our faculty are doing matters, not for the sake of research, but for what that research is doing to make people's lives better, to help make society better. And that's when we'll know that we've really made a difference. Now, those are longer term ways to assess. And some of these other measures you can measure a lot sooner. But ultimately, we want to look at the impact that we're having on people's lives and on problems that are facing society.
And I would just concur with that, because I too believe the output is our students and the graduates who truly leave Baylor University and go out and serve and make an impact in this world and actually change the world in every phase of life. It can be all the way from a CEO of a Fortune 100 company all the way down to someone that has gone into the inner city to work with the underprivileged and has an impact as a Baylor graduate who is changing the world and influencing people in the right way that no other university can have that kind of output, I believe. And that's what I understand when I talk to students and when I talk to people who have left Baylor. They have been motivated to find God's calling to serve others in whatever role they play. And in today's world, that's why I think there is a need for a Baylor, because you can go into any area of life as a Baylor graduate and make a difference.
They have said it better than I can. I would add only that I love your question. And throughout American higher education today, I think the most important challenge facing the industry and the institutions of higher learning is this question. It is, how can we demonstrate impact? What are the outcomes of higher education today? Because we've never been in a more competitive space. And higher education has to demonstrate, as Baylor University has to demonstrate, what the outcomes are associated with what we do. That it's not just inputs or activities, but it involves, fill in the blank, changed lives, deeper learning on the part of students, research that not only is more visible and others around the world want to look to as important for solving problems, but that in fact we have evidence that it's making the world better in some ways. The research projects that we're beginning to screen and to vet and to think of wanting to invest in, this academic strategic planning process, fundamentally is asking the question that you posed. It's seeking to answer the question. And it is, in what areas should Baylor be involved in terms of our scholarship and our research in 5, 10, and 20 years downstream? And we think what Baylor can uniquely do is invest and in high-quality research that will help improve the human condition in at least a couple of different domains. One of those is in material aspects of the human condition. One of the important dimensions of the academic plan that we're putting together, where we think Baylor can, with additional investment and drive and focus and strategy, really begin to position itself better than it has in the past, is in the area of health. Medicine, health outcomes, improving health outcomes, reducing health disparities across communities and across society, but not only in the material conditions of the world in which we live and the lives that we live in healthfulness, but also in the spiritual condition of humanity. So we have a group of faculty that are working around questions around human flourishing. What does it mean for humans, and maybe as important, what does it mean for society and for communities to flourish today? What are the conditions under which we need to build better functioning communities, healthier societies, spiritually healthier societies, ones in which individuals are good citizens, they contribute to the common good, they're engaged in our democratic process, they're satisfied with their lives, and they want to give in ways that help sustain society and help promote future generations. Intergenerational transfers are important in creating, sustaining healthy societies and ones that flourish. So one can see ways in which Baylor faculty, and ways in which Baylor would invest in research, both in terms of the environment, the world around us, the conditions of our own health conditions, and then also the ways in which we view our relationship and experience one another and also God.
Great. Thank you. And a question Michelle is bringing the microphone. Yes, sir.
I like the fact that we're moving towards becoming a research university. But when I think of Baylor's influence in Texas cities and towns, I usually think of doctors and lawyers and teachers. I can understand how a doctor and a lawyer can pay back student loans. I don't understand how a teacher can pay off loans for a Baylor education in this day and age. And I certainly don't want to see us lose Baylor teachers. Can you tell me what your plans are for the future of that?
Well, the cost of higher education is a huge concern for all of us in higher education, both especially for those of us that are at fairly expensive private institutions. And so we are working very hard at the institution to, manage tuition increases. We had been on a step-down process over the last 5 years as part of our plan to reduce the level of tuition increases annually. And next year's will be 4%, which is the lowest it's been in, I don't know, a very, very long time. I'm not even sure how long.
2 decades.
Yeah, probably 20 years. And so we're certainly trying to do that. We're also trying to manage how we use scholarship money. So our discount rate, which is tuition's 100%, and then we give scholarships. Our discount rate on tuition for the average undergraduate student is somewhere between, varies from year to year, somewhere between probably 40 to 47 or 8% from year to year. So most students are not paying the sticker price for the education. But we do still have a lot of students that leave with a lot of debt, and it's a concern for us. The other thing that will be a big part of this campaign is more resources to help support student scholarships. And the more we can do in a campaign, the more we can do with funded research, the more we can find other revenue sources beyond student tuition, the less we have to rely on student tuition to pay the bills at the institution and to support research, to support our students. So what we're trying to do is be as prudent as we can about tuition increases and using scholarships wisely, but then how do we build a stronger financial base over time that makes us less reliant on student tuition so that we can do more scholarships, we can increase tuition at lower rates, and we can fund the initiatives we need to using other resources than undergraduate student tuition, which has been the primary driver of funding almost everything we've done at this institution historically. So it's not an easy answer, and it will take time to work through it, but it's something we're very cognizant of and are working over the longer run to try to bring down that burden, particularly for students that are in some of those kinds of professions where we need them, and we need them to have a Baylor education, but they certainly struggle sometimes with the tuition levels that we have.
Yeah. There's no question, and I would say without exception, every board meeting there's a discussion about the costs, because a lot of us share that concern definitely, and we've tried to work, how do we move from this tuition-based operation and financial performance, as Linda talked, to more of being able to make sure that our students coming here don't leave with all that debt. And one of the things the board has to do is continue to align the financial requirements with the plan and the strategy and what we're doing. That's why we need a major campaign. We need to get our endowment up. You look at our endowment per student and the debt. We need to go out and have a $1 billion, $1.2 billion campaign in order to make sure that we're still offering what we want to offer in the quality education, what I understand from a student-faculty ratio, because this is a unique place, it's a very special place, but yet we can't continue to just let it be the tuition-based revenue sources. We've got to find alternatives, and one of the things that we hope to achieve over the next couple of years is to increase the endowment significantly.
One of the things I would add that I think, part of the reason this is important, we have a higher percentage of our students than a lot of private universities do that come from high need populations in terms of scholarships. We have, I think about 14% of this year's freshman class was what we call first generation students, come from families where no one else in their family had gone to school. They tend to come from lower socioeconomic classes, not always, but tend to. We also have a fairly high percentage of Pell Grant students compared to other private institutions. Pell Grant is a federal grant program for low-income students. So on average, our student population comes from lower socioeconomic classes than you would see at a lot of fairly expensive private institutions. So it puts more burden on us from a scholarship perspective. It also puts more burden on our students from a debt perspective. And so it is something that we probably even pay more attention to and are more concerned about than you might see at other places. And I see Cinda nodding her head, and she works with a lot of our students that have a lot of need and come from backgrounds that maybe aren't as prepared in the same way as other students in our population. So we also have a broader set of unique populations than some private schools that we have to work through these issues for.
I would add just briefly that I like your question so much. I tell my colleagues on occasion that every dean ought to be an ed school dean, at least for a few days. There's no tougher place, given the competitive space today, than that of schools of education. With respect to the preparation of teachers at the undergraduate level, master's level, and also principals. Social work would be another one, because the labor market returns are so low, and because at a place like Baylor, the cost in the kinds of educational quality and experience that we're wanting to provide them are so high that, and I'll say that not once in my time here as Dean of the School of Education was I ever asked how much does it cost to prepare a given student. And I think that's a great reflection on the depth of the commitment at Baylor to preparing teachers to play the important roles in society that they must play. I, like you, think of Baylor historically, the great strength of the university at the undergraduate level and also in select graduate professional fields has been that of preparing professionals for society. Our teachers, our clergy, our social workers, our lawyers, our medical doctors, other professions as well are very important. We're not going to lose sight of that. In fact, we have elements in the plan that will help build the quality of our professional schools, the quality of the students we graduate from our professional schools, and also do a variety of things to help better position us in that area, including growing in select areas the number of students who are studying here for the professions, not only studying here at Baylor, but also prospectively in Waco, but prospectively in other cities around Texas as well. We want to go to where there is population that needs highly qualified, ethically informed, conscientious leaders in the professional fields and prepare them there as much as we do here in some areas. So we're deeply committed to that. The plan reflects that, in fact.
All right, thank you. We have time for just a few more questions. Got one right here.
Hi, I'm Jaina, and I'm actually an international student. I spent 2 years here at Baylor from 2011 to 2013. Had to go back to Korea for military service and other things. And I was wondering, because this is a school that I chose to come back to, despite the costs, what is Baylor doing and what is Baylor implementing in order for the international brand of Baylor University?
You know, it's one of the areas where we actually have some opportunity to grow. We've grown our undergraduate international population, and we think there's some tremendous opportunity potentially in some of our professional graduate programs to take advantage of an international population more. And part of that then is how we position Baylor from an international perspective in those markets where we are going to have opportunity. I think much like in the United States, we're a unique place, and Korea is a perfect example. Korea has a very, very large Christian population and a very large evangelical Christian population, and so there are pockets around the world where our focus on education, our faith-based focus, our focus on research is going to be really valuable and important. So I think one of the things we have to do as we build out this plan is say, where are those areas around the world where we have the most opportunity, given the kind of institution we are and the kinds of programs that we have, that we can build a stronger base outside of the United States. It has not been an area where we put a lot of focus historically, but it is an area where there's opportunity if we do it in the right way, with the right parts of the world and with the right programs. So it's certainly something that we're discussing as part of this plan.
I'd add only that whereas many universities have gone to the so-called big ponds, to China and to other nations, just simply to find the highest scoring students that they can poach for purposes of generating revenue and also inflating SAT scores, ACT scores, for example. What we're trying to do is to find the best talent around the world to bring to us here at Baylor, but also in ways that align strategically with where we're headed academically. So what the academic plan provides us an opportunity to do is to think about parts of the world in which we want to stage research, in which we want to conduct scholarship, in which we want to be a responsible partner with the host country or with the region in helping solve important problems that also have insights and perspectives that help us do better at home in the work that we do. And so in the context of trying to think through where do we want to be in the world, an important element of that is asking also the question, how then would we help create pipelines of students, not only to Baylor, international students, but also of our own students and faculty to be abroad. Globalization and questions with respect to international and global education are very important to us here. They're becoming more important, in fact, than they've, I think, been in the past. And that's being addressed and built specifically into this academic plan that we're building. So it's a great question. Thank you.
Thank you. We've got time for one more question.
Thank you. My name is Bill Cooper. I was here at Baylor when the emphasis on increasing the graduate program was a major emphasis. And several people from other institutions that had strong graduate programs were brought in. And being involved in some of the discussions that went on, they said, you don't want to be like us. We are highly competitive. We don't like each other. And this is a terrible place to work. So the question that I wanted to ask is, what are we doing to make sure that the environment in which we're trying to achieve these very admirable goals is done in a way that strengthens the community, that strengthens the relationships of those who engage in implementing this?
Well, Bill, that's a great question and a really, really important question, because one of the things that's so special about Baylor is the community that we have here, whether it's among our students or our faculty or even the broader community. And it's why we talk about being Baylor family, because that's really what we are. And so it matters a lot to us that we maintain the integrity of that culture as we go forward. And I think at the end of the day, it's a hiring. It's critical that we hire along the right dimensions. We're going to hire people that are going to be great scholars and going to be really great teachers, but we also have to hire people that care deeply about our Christian mission, and they themselves buy into that mission, and they are here in part because they want to contribute to the culture of this institution, not just because they're good scholars and good teachers, but because they care about our Christian mission. And most research institutions, with a rare exceptions, don't care at all about that, and they do not hire on culture and what we call mission fit sometimes. They hire only on teaching and only on research. That makes hiring a more challenging proposition for us, but it also brings people to us that are really exceptional and strong faculty from some of the best institutions in the world because they're Christians and they want to be at a place that cares about that. So we have to be very, very diligent that we continue to maintain the integrity of hiring people that care about our mission. And I think if we do that, it will help alleviate what you see at some other sort of, research institutions where you hear those kinds of descriptions of the culture.
Great. Thank you all so much for your attendance this evening. Very engaging Q&A, and let's thank our panelists again, Dr. Linda Livingstone, Dr. Michael McLendon, and Mr. Joel Allison.
Thank you, brother. Thank you.
Again, we thank you. Traveling mercies to you, and we hope you and your family have a blessed Thanksgiving. Thank you.